Okay, welcome back and happy Monday, everyone. Well, at least for me, it's a happy Monday. I've never understood why so many people bitch about Mondays. I always kind of like them. Don't ask me why. Anyway, it's especially hard to be bitchy on a Monday when I get to talk about a movie that is not only one of my favorite zombie movies, one of my favorite horror movies, just quite frankly, one of my favorite movies, period, Train to Busan. With the remake due out this year, I thought it was as good a time as any to give this one another go. Train to Busan, quite frankly, came out at a time when the whole zombie genre was starting to feel very tired and managed to transcend those limitations and that tired track record and elevate it into a heightened melodrama that, quite frankly, approaches movie masterpiece. As good as the zombie action is in this movie, every time I watch it, the zombies feel less and less important, and I'm more and more taken and fascinated and impressed by how well fashioned it is as a story and how well it pays off all its characters emotionally. Over the course of just 2 hours, you go through a journey, no pun intended, with these characters that most people today would need an entire series to flesh out. It once again reflects something that I have firmly believed for a while and which I have talked about on my channel before, which is that the more closely and carefully and minutely you flesh out all your characters, the more universal and relatable they feel. I would defy anyone to watch this movie and tell me that they don't see facets of themselves in both the more appealing and less appealing characters. Besides the fact that we see the zombie outbreak almost entirely from the point of view of these characters, the best thing about the outbreak in this particular film is that it isn't rushed. It starts with fleeting, subtle moments where you have just hints of something being amiss at the corner of the frame. It progresses slowly but steadily with a real sense of inevitability over the course of the movie. Even when we get to the climax, the horde is still growing and spreading out. A little bit like another Korean-helmed film, Snowpiercer, Train to Busan uses the train as a metaphor for class warfare. Although, well, if we're being totally frank about it, in the case of Train to Busan, it's less of a metaphor and more just like literally what is happening. But in a post-COVID world, the panic and paranoia and uncertainty, the anarchy, and just the general thematic question of what someone is prepared to do for the safety and benefit of others, asking what's best for the most people, it all feels very timely. And even if it wasn't, it's still a horror film that isn't afraid to actually be about something, like with a capital S. The train cars are filmed and framed in such a way that we always get a really three-dimensional sense of space. They create a whole world of mazes and obstacles in what should, in theory, be a very limited setting. Now, this does ask us to suspend some disbelief in a sequence where our heroes are crawling over top of the zombies using the overhead compartments. I mean, I'm pretty sure that those couldn't hold one adult male, never mind 3, but screw it, it's still an awesome visual and a great scene. Throughout the movie, it's actually quite refreshing how characters use their heads and work together to escape danger. They actually learn from what they're observing. It doesn't necessarily save all of them because, as I mentioned, this is a movie where the horde becomes overwhelming in a way that conveys a sense of inevitability, but they survive and stay ahead as long as they do in very plausible ways. The sorts of things that most of us could probably do if we had some wits about us in this kind of a situation, and that makes them very relatable and rootable. And at this point, this is where I'll be getting more directly into some spoilers. Again, don't look for a plot synopsis, but I am going to talk pretty directly about certain characters and plot points in some depth. I don't always care all that much about spoilers when it comes to older movies, but in the case of Train to Busan, it's such a pleasure to watch it for the first time that if you haven't seen it yet, I would highly recommend you hit pause and go give it a spin right now. And with that, we are officially in Spoiler Town. So in keeping with the inevitable force of momentum that the zombie outbreak has in this movie and playing to the social themes that it's studying, we see that the zombie outbreak, like any major human crisis, does not necessarily change you as much as it summons forth that which is already latent within you. Which in the case of the train company's CEO Yoon-suk essentially means once a cowardly child, always a cowardly child. The fact that he makes it all the way to the front of the train by literally stepping on other people only to be turned into a zombie anyways, it's already first-class dramatic irony. but when he becomes stripped of any remaining dignity that he might have by being literally reduced to thinking that he's a lost 5-year-old child, it becomes one of the best moments of poetic justice I've ever seen in any horror film, period. You even kind of feel for Yoon-suk on some level because you realize that he's not really evil as much as he is just pathetic. The fact that he is the CEO of the train company is completely deliberate, too. Like, this guy is only, I would say, 5 to 10 years and one wheelchair shy of being Old Man Potter. I do say that deliberately because this movie is so unabashed in its social commentary and ideas and values that it harkens all the way back to the glory days of Frank Capra. The more I think about it, if Frank Capra ever did make a zombie movie, it probably would have looked something like Train to Busan. Picture the characters Yoon-suk and Suk-woo recast with Lionel Barrymore and Jimmy Stewart respectively, and I think you'll start to see what I mean. It's not really that much of a stretch. That in and of itself is cool because by and large they really don't make movies like this much anymore. Right down to the fact that Suk-woo starts out the movie as a man who is self-centered just like Yoon-suk, but undergoes a conversion when, over the course of the movie, he begins to observe how other people go out of their way to help him. A lot of that help comes in the form of the character Sung-hwa, a character who, frankly, induces a smile in me every second he is on screen. He's the kind of big-hearted lug who's the toughest guy in any room he's standing in, but is also confident and decent enough to keep it to himself until called upon. He brings an understated swagger and very effortless vigor to all the action scenes. He supplies humor when it's needed, every punchline lands, and if you're not careful, you might catch yourself shedding a tear when he finally gives his unborn daughter a name during his final farewell to his wife. Every big farewell in the movie is that good. Whether it's the final moments between the two elderly sisters through the window, or Suk-woo's final moments with his daughter Suwon. Melodrama has a bad rap, but it can work if you've earned it, and every big emotional payoff in this movie is completely earned. They absolutely save the best for last, when Sung-hwa's widow Sung-young and Sik-woo's surviving daughter Suwon are approaching the military quarantine border. And Suwon narrowly saves the two of them from being shot by the soldiers when she finally manages to sing Aloha Oi, which, you might remember, was the song that she was struggling and failing to sing on her own in her father's absence, based on a video that he was watching at the beginning of the movie. This time Suk-woo's gone, but he is not absent. Not only does it bookend the movie on an emotional high note, but it's just dramatically thrilling, because by the time they finally get off the train with everything that's happened, you're completely drained, and then to discover that there's still one more moment of tension up the movie's sleeve, like, your jaw almost drops. If you're not on the edge of your seat at that point, you're not alive. This movie is a flat-out masterpiece, pure and true, and I would not change a thing about it. As far as the upcoming American remake goes, well, I mean, those don't always have a great track record, but I'm keeping an open mind, primarily because Timo Tjahjanto is the director. If you watch this channel at all, you're very used to hearing me gush about Timo Tjahjanto. He's one of my favorite directors working today, bar none. So while I don't necessarily think that Train to Busan is necessarily even old enough to warrant being remade yet, I think I can count on Timo Tjahjanto to do me right. I mean, I believe that James Wan is serving as a producer on this one in some capacity, or maybe his company is. I'd have to look that up again. But anyways, thinking about that and, reflecting on how good The Night Comes for Us was, I have the feeling that Timo Tjahjanto often does some of his best work when he has the resources of a more major organization behind him. I have a feeling the heightened melodrama that gives this one its identity and makes it so near and dear to me will probably be played down. The way that Timo Tjahjanto likes to do things, this one will probably be a lot more visceral. We're going to get a lot more gravy in this one, you can count on that. That's the one thing that would have had to have been firmly in place when he was making the movie, is that they allowed him to make it as extreme as he wanted to be. I'm also thinking it will probably be a much more dark and cynical movie. If you're familiar at all with Tjahjanto's work, you know that he's not necessarily a guy who leans too hard on happy endings in any form. I really hope he makes it his own though, and I do hope it makes a big splash. He deserves it. He's talented and fearless and visionary in ways that most North American horror filmmakers are not. This could be his shot, I think, at some solid Hollywood crossover success. But we'll catch that train when it arrives at the station. In the meantime, Train to Busan remains completely and utterly classic, and in my opinion, in the running as one of the best zombie movies ever made. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. Look for more content coming your way soon. I'll probably cover the couple other entries in the series before the remake is released. Either way, there is more in the pike, and I will catch you next time.